Hi guys, it's Kendra from Crafty Kendra, and today I'm going to show you how to make this card. So let's go ahead and get started. The first thing that we're going to do is bring in a scrap piece of Bashful Blue cardstock and our embossing buddy. Just going to run our embossing buddy along with this piece of cardstock. Going to bring in our stamp, which is the Bold Snowflake stamp. It's a single stamp from Stampin' Up, and it's only here until January 2nd, 2013. Gonna ink it up using our Versamark. Just gonna stamp it down. Gonna bring in my Powder Pal tray and our peppermint scented embossing powder. White embossing powder or even clear embossing powder would work great for this too. Just gonna pour it over. Some of it off. Alright, just gonna set the extra out of the way. Just have a little cutting board here. I bring in so that I don't ruin the finish on my table when I heat emboss. I'm gonna bring in our heat tool. It has two settings. The first setting just helps you dry things faster. The second setting is the one that we're going to use to heat emboss. Right, there we go. Now you notice this time that my snowflake just looks a little bit darker blue. That's because this is the scented and it is clear. The first time I used Whisper White, so it's up to you so you can see the difference. Now what we're going to do is bring in our Blossoms punch, and we're just going to go ahead and punch out our snowflake. Going to bring in the rest of the pieces for our card. First thing we're going to do is our card base, which is an 8.5 by 5.5 inch piece of Sahara sand that I have scored at 4 1/4. We're going to use our Sahara sand ink pad and sponge dauber. We're just going to go ahead and ink the edges. Alright, we also have another piece of Sahara sand, and this measures 4 inches by 5 1/4. We're going to go ahead and sponge its edges as well. Okay, just like that. Going to set those aside. We're done with our Sahara ink for just right now. Gonna bring back in our snowflake that we embossed and punched out. Gonna flip it over and just put a little bit of snail on the back of each of the little petals. And the reason for doing that is I've taken and punched out a Blossoms punch out of Ivory Confetti cardstock, and then using my scissors I just snipped it apart so that I get individual petals. I've already gone ahead and done that. So I have 6 petals, and what we're going to do is we're just going to take and shadow our snowflake with them all the way around. After you're done doing that, without re-inking, you're just going to take your sponge dauber and sponge the edges of the ivory pieces that you put on here, just to give them a little more depth whenever they are laying against the other ivory cardstock we'll be adding. Setting that aside, we'll bring in a piece of confetti ivory cardstock that measures 4 inches by 1 3/4, and then we'll bring in a piece of designer series paper from the Festival of Prints designer series paper pad that has a whole bunch of different patterns in there, and it is double-sided. So this piece measures 4 inches by 1 1/4 inch, and I just put snail on the back. I'm going to center it onto our ivory piece. I have a little overhang, so I'm just going to flip it over and using my paper snips, snip that off. Attach some snail to the back of the confetti ivory. Bring in my 4 inch by 5 1/4 inch piece of Sahara sand that we have already sponged, and bringing this piece down about 1 1/4 inch. We're just going to place it onto our card. Excuse me. We're going to bring in our greeting, which is wishing you Christmas cheer and a Happy New Year. That is from the Happy Hour stamp set. We're going to stamp it on our card using cherry cobbler ink. And our Stamp-A-Majig. I made a permanent image sheet for this using vellum cardstock. We're just going to stamp our greeting in the bottom right-hand corner. Just stamped it twice to make sure that it's really nice and dark. Close up the ink pad. Applying some snail to the back of my layering piece. Going to bring back in our card base, and with our fold to our left side, we're just going to layer it onto our card base. And this time I'm going to use sticky strip. Just going to, I'm going to use dimensionals. Using dimensionals, I'm just going to take off 3 dimensionals and place them on the back of my snowflake. And then I'm going to place it centered on that little strip. Alright, and that finishes off the card. This is the one that we made, and this is the one that I showed you before we began. The only difference is this one has the white embossing powder, and this one has the peppermint sticks scented embossing powder. That's all I have for you guys today, so I hope you enjoyed this tutorial, and I look forward to seeing you next time.